I don't feel sad. My mother-in-law and Benjamin headed to prepare the venue earlier, and as I was getting ready, I heard Jackson making a phone call in the hallway. I married her out of pity because she can't have kids. It's basically charity. I gasped. And yet, she's so arrogant it's infuriating. Pretending to be Benjamin's mother when she's nothing but a maid. He laughed then. We'll have her cover the funeral cost. With that money, I'll buy a high-end bag for you. Charlotte wanted one, right? He continued talking, unaware that I was listening in the hallway. Trying to maintain my composure, my body trembled with rage. I'll put an end to this. This person is neither family nor anything to me. I'll let out all the pent-up frustration I've been holding back. He's mistaken if he thinks I'll always be docile. I am Madison, a 50-year-old housewife. I married Jackson 11 years ago, and have been living with my stepson Benjamin and my in-laws since. The reason Jackson and I met was through a mutual friend. After being dumped by my fiancé because of infertility, feeling depressed, a friend, feeling sorry for me, organized a gathering with their friends for drinks. Jackson was not very talkative but seemed sincere. We found common ground in our love for movies, and he was the one who suggested we start dating with marriage in mind. His ex-wife was into gambling, racked up debt, and left, abandoning her young son. When I heard he was looking for a mother for his son, I met Benjamin on one of our dates. Benjamin, without any shyness, quickly took a liking to me. Later, when I was introduced to my in-laws, they seemed like nice people, and by our one-year anniversary, I strongly desired to become part of Jackson's family. But looking back, it was clear that Jackson and my in-laws had been deceiving me all along. Fooled, I had a simple wedding and started living with Jackson and Benjamin. Shortly after getting married, Jackson asked me to become a full-time housewife. I enjoyed my clerical job and wanted to continue, but he was persistent. I want you to focus on Benjamin. You can return to work once he's a bit older. All right. I could see where Jackson was coming from. After all, I was inexperienced in raising children. The idea of raising someone else's child properly was also a source of anxiety for me. I sought advice from friends who had children, and desperately gathered information from the internet and parenting books. Initially, Benjamin seemed affectionate towards me, but as he grew older, he started to assert his independence and eventually began to talk back. Instead of consoling me, Jackson would mock me with a smirk. Seems like a real mom is different. After all, you're just a stranger. Stop it! Why do you have to say things like that? When I objected, Jackson raised his eyebrows in surprise. What's wrong with telling the truth? Jackson was always out, either at work or drinking with colleagues. He completely dumped childcare on me, yet all he did was make snide remarks. And whenever Benjamin did something he didn't like, he blamed it all on me. Crying all the time is because of Madison's bad parenting. Got a cold again? Probably malnutrition. It's because you feed him instant food for lunch. He'd get cranky teaching multiplication to Benjamin, who had just started elementary school, complaining about his slow learning. He's just learned addition. Multiplication is too soon for him. When I protested, Jackson laughed as if he was astonished. I was able to do middle school work at his age. Looks like Madison's stupidity has rubbed off on him. He'd smirk at me, saying, "Well, you're just a high school grad, right?" When Benjamin was around 8 years old, we started living with his parents. This was never part of the plan, but it suddenly came up because of my mother-in-law's deteriorating health. I was told I have high blood pressure at a medical checkup. I need to undergo treatment and follow a diet. Hearing this, Jackson suggested they move in with us. It'll be easier if you come to our place. Mom doesn't have a driver's license, and it's tough to go to appointments, right? Madison can drive you. I couldn't believe my ears. It's one thing if he were to help, but why try to play the filial son at my expense? He did that without even asking me. Oh, is that okay? That'd be a great help. We were struggling with the cost of remodeling the house. Great. Once you've sold the house, you can move in any time. I was flabbergasted by Jackson's audacity. This house is my inheritance from my parents, you know. After hanging up the phone, Jackson nonchalantly informed me. So, my parents are moving in, just so you know. Just so I know? Don't decide things on your own. Talk to me first. It's my house. Jackson made a displeased face. You don't like living with my parents? It's not that. It's natural for a wife to take care of her mother-in-law. You're free anyway, so be useful. My opinion was completely ignored, and soon the living with his parents began. Living together meant being at the mercy of my mother-in-law. She would complain about the weather, feeling sluggish, or just not in the mood. She used these as excuses to avoid going to the hospital. Then let's not go. You're okay with your illness getting worse? What a terrible person. On the other hand, if I insisted too much on going, she'd get annoyed at being nagged. Once finally in the car, it was a barrage of complaints. Your driving is reckless. Drive safely. Don't drive so slow. Speed it up. As soon as we got home, she sat on the sofa and started complaining. I got car sick because of you. Why are you so bad at driving? She could use the bus that goes from the nearest bus stop right to the hospital. But I guess she thinks the bus fare is a waste of money. Not just for doctor visits, my mother-in-law complains about the house too. This house feels so old-fashioned. Are you sure it was remodeled? It's uncomfortable not being designed for two families. And that's her line, even though she's the one imposing on us. My father-in-law had his quirks too. Even when Jackson and his mother criticized me, he wouldn't join in, so I thought he was on my side, but it seemed he just wanted to avoid conflict. Proof of that is, he wouldn't respond to greetings, and when he did talk to me, it was only to ask what's for dinner, or is the bathroom clean, as if he wanted to interact with me as little as possible, and then I found out he spends his days at gambling or going to the races. If he's got that much free time, I really wish he'd drive my mother-in-law to her appointments. After all, she is his wife. My mother-in-law also had a lot to say about the meals I prepared. His parents prefer a fish-based diet. However, Jackson and Benjamin like stronger flavors, so I have to prepare different menus for them. As if that wasn't hard enough, my mother-in-law needs a low-sodium diet, so I end up making 3 different meals for 5 people. Without knowing how much trouble I go through planning the menu every day, my mother-in-law complained. This is bland. I can't eat something this tasteless. You're doing this to spite me, aren't you? What a mean daughter-in-law. When it's low in salt, it's naturally going to be bland. Please bear with it. Then my mother-in-law complained to Jackson. Jackson, Madison is being horrible to me. Jackson looked annoyed at my mother-in-law's complaint. Make something tastier. If you say so, why don't you cook? When I said that, caring yet firm, my mother-in-law glared at me. My. A wife talking back to her husband. Anyway, please bear with the bland taste. Making excuses for your poor cooking skills. Despite having pushed the cooking onto me because she can't cook, it seems she doesn't have a shred of gratitude. Slowly, I started to feel disillusioned with Jackson always siding with my mother-in-law. One day, as I was walking back from shopping, I stopped in my tracks when I overheard my mother-in-law talking. I wondered what she was discussing, but she was actually spreading bad things about me to the neighbors. My daughter-in-law is so defiant. Living off Jackson's salary, yet she's always talking back to me and Jackson. Does she even understand her place? Really? Lazing around at home without working, always neglecting the housework. She pushes cleaning and laundry onto me and does nothing. Listening in from behind a fence, I was dumbfounded. Ever since we started living together, my mother-in-law hasn't even washed a single cup. Looks like this daughter-in-law is a dud too. It's bad for Benjamin's upbringing. Jackson too, but your grandson is the biggest victim here. Poor thing. The resident's tone of pity made my mother-in-law dramatically lament. See, it's me. stressed out by being bossed around by her, and now my stomach hurts. You've had a tough time. Don't push yourself too hard. I finally understood. No wonder I've been avoided by the neighbors recently. I clenched my fists, calming my anger with great effort, and took the long way home. That evening, when Jackson came home, I confronted him about my mother-in-law's actions. Don't you think spreading rumors is a bit much? He was just agreeing with what the neighbors said. Jackson made a face of disgust. You just need to improve your cooking skills. I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, just try to get along, will you? I was driven by a sense of helplessness and anger. Do I have to keep enduring these snide remarks every day? When Benjamin became a teenager, he hit his rebellious phase. Having grown up seeing Jackson and my in-laws look down on me, it was natural that he would mock me. He hurled insults at me like it was nothing. Wash my gym clothes by today. I need them for tomorrow. Leftovers for lunch? That's just being lazy. You're a stay-at-home wife, you have time to make something proper. I hate this brand of stock. Know my preferences at least. You're useless. Despite relying on me for everything, he was always finding faults. And unbelievably, he would kick me out of the house when his friends came over. Stay out of sight. It'd be fine if you were beautiful, but having an old hag like you around is embarrassing. This is my house. Don't get cocky. You're eating off my dad's salary, aren't you? Jackson and the in-laws, who were nearby, didn't seem to care at all. Furious, I finally scolded Benjamin. If you keep up this attitude, I'll stop taking care of you altogether. Abandoning your child? You're a failure as a mother. Benjamin became enraged. Then, Jackson interjected with a look of annoyance. Madison, don't react to everything the kid says. It's immature. I'm correcting his rude behavior towards adults. I raised my voice, pouring out my grievances. Hey, why don't you get involved with Benjamin a bit more as a father? I'm providing for the family, isn't that enough? Jackson glared at me, defiant. Who do you think allows you to have such an easy life every day? Since you're useless and can't earn money, the least you could do is devote yourself to my family. He yelled at me loudly. Otherwise, there's no point in keeping you in this house. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce. I'll kick you out right now. And to think you can't even have kids, what a failure. I was close to tears. To think he could say such horrible things so calmly. Behind Jackson, Benjamin and my mother-in-law were looking at me with malicious smiles. Then I'll start working. I can contribute to society too. Working from home would be okay, right? Who would want to hire you? If you slack off on the housework, I'll make you quit immediately. After this exchange, I decided to start working from home. I had experience as a sales admin until a few years ago, so I was good with computer work. I registered with an outsourcing company, and eventually, I started getting constant work requests as I built up my performance. I worked in the bedroom, from late at night until early morning, when the family was asleep. Lately, Jackson has been sleeping in the study, bringing a bed in there, so I can use the computer at night without complaints. I would prefer to work in the sunny living room during the day, but my mother-in-law spends all day glued to the TV, watching talk shows and historical dramas, so that's almost impossible. By the time Benjamin entered high school, my work had stabilized, and I was able to save a fixed amount every month. One morning, as usual, my mother-in-law went to wake up her husband and came down to the kitchen looking pale. While preparing breakfast and Jackson drinking coffee at the dining table, she said in a shaky voice, "Dad is..." What? We all rushed to the bedroom, and there was my father-in-law, lying in bed as if he were asleep, having passed away. After that, it was chaos. Jackson took over for the panicked mother-in-law, calling the family doctor to issue a death certificate, arranging the funeral service, and taking care of all the other procedures. Seeing my mother-in-law usually so strong, now in a daze, I felt somewhat sorry for her. But that feeling quickly vanished. While I was doing the cleaning, laundry, And meal preparation as usual, my mother-in-law said spitefully.
You sure can keep your cool. After all, you've been taken care of by your father. Don't you have a human heart?
As I was setting the table, I looked at my mother-in-law with disdain and sighed softly. I can say this for certain. I never once felt taken care of by my father-in-law since getting married. Being with my father-in-law made me feel like I was air. It was unpleasant. So, it feels strange suddenly not having him around, but I don't feel sad in the slightest. Well, I'm still his daughter-in-law, so I'll attend the funeral and fulfill my duties. With that in mind, I took out clothes from the closet on the second floor and prepared a bag. Benjamin and my mother-in-law said they would prepare the funeral home and left the house before me. As I was getting dressed and walking down the stairs, I heard Jackson's voice. He seemed to be talking to someone on his phone.
Yeah, Dad just suddenly. So, I'm a bit tied up with everything. I'll be a bit late to meet you tonight. Sorry, especially since it's an important day.
I felt a sense of discomfort. In front of my mother-in-law, he acted sorrowful, but his voice didn't sound like someone whose father had just died.
Why did I marry such a plain woman?
Jackson explained with a laugh.
I felt sorry for her because she can't have kids. Basically, it was for charity.
I gasped.
And yet, she's so cheeky it's annoying. Acting like she's Benjamin's mother when she's just a maid.
He chuckled then.
I'll have her cover the funeral cost. With that money, I'll buy a high-brand bag for you. Charlotte wanted one, right?
He continued talking in a cheery tone, unaware that I was listening in the hallway. When I showed my face after he ended the call, he was startled for a moment but quickly put on a smile.
Oh, you were here?
Yes.
Aren't you leaving yet?
I'm heading out now.
Want to ride together?
Maybe I will. Trying to keep calm, my body trembled with anger. I murmured in my heart. I'm done with this. Such a person is neither family nor anything to me. I'll vent all the frustration I've been holding back. He's mistaken if he thinks I'll stay quiet forever. The next morning, as I sat leisurely on a sofa drinking coffee, my phone rang. It was Jackson. Early in the morning, calls from Jackson came every few minutes. The barrage of messages was intense. Even though I saw the messages, I didn't respond at all, so he must have switched to calling out of impatience. Sighing, I answered the phone to Jackson, ranting rapidly.
Hey, what are you doing? The funeral's about to start. Oh, really? That has nothing to do with me.
Jackson was furious at my casual response.
What? Stop messing around and get here now. I thought you went home because you disappeared from the wake, but then you just vanished.
I calmly replied to the frantic Jackson.
That's impossible. There's rush hour traffic, and it's over a 2-hour drive by car.
I sent a photo I took through the window to Jackson's phone, and he yelled.
Where the hell are you? I'm at a hotel in the next city. I've always wanted to try their breakfast buffet. Food made by someone else is the best. You're skipping a family funeral to stay at a hotel? Are you out of your mind?
I coldly replied to the barking Jackson.
Well, I'm not family, am I? Just a maid. I have no obligation to attend the funeral.
Jackson fell silent then. After a short silence, he told my mother-in-law and Benjamin.
Mom, Benjamin, just wait here for a bit.
Footsteps echoed. It seemed like they were moving down the hallway of the funeral venue. Eventually, the footsteps stopped, and Jackson spoke again.
First off, give me your bank account number.
What?
Why? We need to pay for the funeral service, don't we? So you're saying I should cover it because you misused funds?
After a moment of being speechless, Jackson yelled in desperation.
That's right. I know you've been hoarding it. You can easily spare something like $20,000, can't you? If I give it to you, it'll never come back, right? Deal with it yourself. How dare you speak to me like that?
Over the phone, I could sense Jackson's panic.
A wife should just silently obey her husband. A wife isn't a slave.
I sneered at Jackson.
Anyway, why don't you just be honest with your mom? She's soft on you, so she might just give it to you easily.
My words made Jackson's voice shrink.
That's impossible. If she found out I spent the funeral money on a woman, she'd definitely get mad.
I smirked. Even he's afraid of his mother.
Serves you right. It's your own fault. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now.
Jackson was still shouting something, but I hung up. If he's too embarrassed to say it himself, I'll pass the message along to him. Sharing the info about him spending the donation on a woman in the family's shared social media will surely catch Benjamin and my mother-in-law's eye. After that, Jackson called me incessantly, so in frustration, I dashed to the mobile shop. How can I help you?
I want to cancel my phone plan now.
Sure. Canceling my phone and changing my number filled me with a sense of relief. Returning to the hotel, I wandered the nearby streets with a leisurely feeling. Ever since getting married, I had to report my outing plans and return time to Jackson, and there were even times he'd call come home soon. I never thought much of it before, but looking back, it was a terrible constraint. Jackson must be flustered not being able to contact me by now. Serves him right. I'll ignore him forever. Wrapped in a refreshing sense of freedom, I enjoyed shopping at my leisure. One day, I visited a church. My mother-in-law had mentioned that they were holding the service on the previous Sunday morning. I confirmed Jackson's car was parked in the parking lot. Likely, the other cars parked alongside it belonged to relatives. I opened the gate and stepped on the cobblestone path leading to the main hall. Listening closely, I could hear the murmur of casual conversation. The service had ended, and it seemed everyone was relaxing while having a chat.
Hello everyone, it's been a while.
As I opened the entrance door and greeted them, the room fell silent for a moment before a wave of reproachful voices erupted.
Madison! Skipping both the wake and the funeral, what were you thinking? It was your husband's father's funeral, for heaven's sake. Your own father has already passed, so he was practically your real parent.
I flashed a cold smile.
Well, I've been officially designated as the maid, you see.
While I tossed out this sarcastic remark and glanced at Jackson, he was glaring at me with furious eyes.
I did my best to serve your father and mother. I even tried to fulfill the role of Benjamin's mother to the best of my ability.
I looked over my mother-in-law, Jackson, and Benjamin in turn and shrugged.
But according to Jackson, I'm just a maid. A mere maid shouldn't attend the funeral, right? So, I refrained. I never said such a thing.
Jackson's voice cracked. I exhaled softly and pressed the play button on my phone's recording app. The conversation I had overheard on the stairs filled the quiet lounge with loud volume. As Jackson turned pale, I pressed on.
By the way, now that the funeral's over, did my mother-in-law end up covering the donation? What?
As the relatives looked bewildered, Jackson and my mother-in-law exchanged glances before awkwardly averting their eyes.
No, well, you see, Madison, what are you talking about? It's impossible to spend $20,000 in one night.
Don't talk nonsense. Jackson attempted a forced laugh in front of me as I swiped through my phone.
I found this. Are you familiar with this person? To boldly show their face like this, quite fearless, aren't they?
The image I showed froze Jackson. It was a photo of a woman snuggled up close to a man. Though their eyes were hidden, the man was dressed in a dark suit and black tie. Furthermore, the woman had commented,
"Happy to have my dear Jackson drop by during the wake. Choosing a date with me over saying goodbye to his dad, I'm so happy. He even bought me the $20,000 bag I've been wanting at the brand shop. Isn't it cute?"
As Jackson reached out to snatch the phone, I kept it out of his reach, holding it high for the relatives at the back to see.
I searched for this Charlotte person on social media, just going through everything. You can't pretend it's a coincidence with all these details matching up, right?
Realizing excuses were futile, Jackson shut his mouth, a frightened expression on his face. Even Benjamin, usually his father's defender, was at a loss for words. The relatives began to condemn Jackson in unison.
Leaving the wake under the pretext of retrieving something, just to meet your mistress. Shameful.
Previously silent relatives couldn't hold back any longer and erupted in anger.
You bought a brand bag with the donation money. Rushing out before the funeral started must have been to withdraw money from the bank. What a disgrace of a son. Shut up. It was our first date in a month. And since Mom covered the money, it's all good now.
Jackson retorted defensively.
To me, a date is more important than a funeral. If I skipped it and got dumped, it would be a huge problem. Cut me some slack.
Even my mother-in-law was taken aback by this.
Jackson, how could you say such a thing?
Well, it's just an honest opinion, isn't it? Smiling, I spread out Benjamin's bank book in front of everyone.
Given he shamelessly claims dating is more important than his father, it's no wonder he'd accidentally use his son's savings, right?
Benjamin, peering over, soon looked utterly defeated.
It's empty. This has to be a joke.
He turned to Jackson, accusing him fiercely.
Did you use my savings, Dad? You're the only one who knew the PIN. You knew I've been saving up my money since Mom was around, didn't you?
Jackson, shamelessly smiling, responded.
Well, I tried to use Madison's money, but didn't know the PIN. You had saved quite a bit, huh? That's my boy. Don't mess around. Is that what a father does?
Benjamin screamed, tears in his eyes.
I don't want to call you my father anymore. I'm disowning you right here.
My mother-in-law tried to calm the enraged Benjamin.
Benjamin, forgive him. Thanks to your dad, we get to eat delicious food every day, don't we? Giving your dad your pocket money isn't such a big deal. My money, too, probably went to his mistress, right? It's fine to give gifts, but use your own money. Why are you touching mine?
Benjamin voiced a very valid question.
And the same goes for Granddad's funeral. After all the bad-mouthing, trying to get the money covered by someone else makes no sense. Pay it yourself. What's not there can't be given,
I said, looking at Jackson, and chuckled softly.
Judging by the social media, you've been giving her expensive gifts every time you meet, right? The reason you divorced your previous wife was also because of your infidelity, wasn't it?
Pointing this out, Jackson and my mother-in-law were left speechless with uncomfortable expressions. It seemed Benjamin hadn't been told any of this.
What a nasty woman. Did you even research the cause of our divorce?
I snorted at Jackson's discomfort.
I just thought I'd learn about your past, so I contacted your best friend through an acquaintance. Then, I stumbled upon some interesting stories.
Just then, my phone buzzed with a message, so I stood up.
Excuse me for a moment. I have to welcome a guest.
I left the lounge and headed to the entrance. Returning to the main hall with a couple in tow, Jackson gasped.
Lucas! And Charlotte too!
Sorry, Jackson. I ended up spilling everything to Lucas. Charlotte looked downcast, while Lucas was visibly furious.
Lucas, calm down. You're misunderstanding. We weren't having an affair, okay?
It's no use, Jackson. I spoke with a look of disbelief.
Lucas, I found your and Charlotte's text exchanges on the phone. I had a detective agency thoroughly investigate.
So, no escaping this one. Lucas stared straight at Jackson with bloodshot eyes.
Even though you have a bad history with women, I trusted you because you were my best friend. I never imagined you'd secretly meet her at a hotel the day after we went drinking. And then, you kept sneaking into my house while I was away on business trips, didn't you?
With veins bulging at his temples, Lucas yelled resentfully.
I should never have introduced her to you. Come on, my encounter with Charlotte was fate.
Jackson said, grinning smugly.
I'm more suitable for Charlotte than you ever could be. What? Keep your dreams for your sleep. That's ridiculous, right?
Jackson pouted.
I got stuck with a plain, older woman, while you marry a young and cute one. Plus, Charlotte said she fell in love with me at first sight.
Jackson laughed out loud while Lucas clenched his fists.
As you wish, I'll divorce Charlotte. Expect a lawsuit for alimony, and be ready to pay.
I don't have that kind of money.
I've already spent a lot on Charlotte, and just paying my ex-wife was hard enough.
Jackson said defiantly.
Well, I'll pay with the inheritance from Dad. Right, Mom?
Jackson beamed, but my mother-in-law murmured softly.
There's no such thing. Huh? If we had money, we wouldn't have moved into your place but renovated our old house and lived there.
My mother-in-law spoke with a grim face. I nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law's decision to live together wasn't by choice but due to unavoidable circumstances.
But you had savings for retirement, didn't you?
Jackson showed panic, to which my mother-in-law sadly shook her head.
After retiring, your father spent it all on horse racing. He even gambled away the pension, covering the shortfall with loans. So, there's no inheritance.
Jackson turned pale and shrieked.
No way, give me a break. I moved in with you guys thinking I'd get a hefty inheritance.
My mother-in-law's face darkened with anger.
You were planning this all along? Of course. Otherwise, why would I bother calling you parents over? It's annoying.
Jackson said irritably.
All the living expenses I've covered, just wasted. It's like throwing it down the drain.
Disappointment appeared on my mother-in-law's face.
Is money all you think about? It's my dad's fault, can't help it.
Charlotte smirked, having listened to the whole exchange.
I went out with you because you graduated from a better university and worked for a renowned company than Lucas did.
What a disappointment. Approaching the stiffened Jackson, she declared firmly.
Thanks for all the lavish gifts.
By now.
What? Hey! We're not done talking yet, Charlotte.
Lucas chased after her, heading out the door.
Poor thing, got dumped, huh? No inheritance, and your affair partner turns her back on you. Talk about a double whammy.
I gave Jackson a sympathetic smile.
Paying alimony to both Lucas and me seems like it's going to be tough for you.
Well, good luck with that.
Hey, Madison, wait!
Jackson tried to stop me with a domineering tone as I was about to leave.
How are you going to live if you divorce me with your meager salary? I don't necessarily want a divorce. If you keep doing the housework, I don't mind keeping you around as before.
I exploded in anger at Jackson's arrogance.
Enough already. Who do you think you are?
My outburst surprised Jackson, Benjamin, and my mother-in-law, who all froze in shock.
That house is mine, isn't it? I'm the one who's been letting you three stay there. And let me tell you, it was because of me doing all the housework that the house was running smoothly. Don't you understand that? Madison, calm down. After all the ridicule, you don't even understand that much? Your intelligence is as expected.
My sneering at Jackson caused laughter to break out among the relatives.
I've been offered to return to my previous job as a full-time employee. I can live just fine on my own. Maybe you should worry about your debt-ridden self?
Yeah, Dad. We're in a worse situation. Benjamin also tried to stop me in a panic.
Come on, we're family, right? If you become a full-time employee, contribute your salary to the household. We're going bankrupt at this rate.
Benjamin's pathetic plea was echoed by my mother-in-law.
Running away, even though you're just a wife? Help us out for once.
I turned back to the three of them with a cold remark.
Have you forgotten how you've treated me until now? There's no place for a maid in this. Madison! Family of three, please help each other out. And I'll be expecting you to move out of the house promptly.
I left the church. Returning to the hotel, I sent Jackson the signed divorce papers. I plan to live in the hotel until those three move out. Though they left quietly, Jackson kept stalling on the alimony payments. I wanted to reconcile, but she pushed for the divorce, was his excuse. Convinced by the lawyer that a court divorce would cost extra, and is it really worth it, a pale-faced Jackson finally gave in and transferred the alimony to my account. To pay the alimony to me, he had to take on more debt and even started working part-time jobs since his salary wasn't enough. Jackson apparently told his boss and co-workers that the divorce was due to irreconcilable differences. However, since Lucas's friend worked in a different department, the true reason spread throughout the company. Feeling uncomfortable, Jackson quit his job as if fleeing. Naturally, his income plummeted. Now, he's juggling multiple part-time jobs, desperately trying to pay off his debts. Despite once being so close, the family relations have deteriorated. Benjamin has become thoroughly rebellious, skipping school and barely showing up at the shabby apartment the three of them moved into, choosing instead to hang out and waste time. My mother-in-law has not forgiven Jackson for agreeing to live together with inheritance in mind and now refuses to even speak to him. The incident of stealing Lucas's wife spread like wildfire among friends, and Jackson, having lost all his friends, is leading a lonely life. Having returned to my previous job as a full-time employee, I'm working full-time without having to worry about anyone else, enjoying my life alone. Only now do I fully realize how difficult living with those three had been. From now on, I plan to work while taking care of my health and savoring the rest of my life to the fullest.